Georgia Secretary of State reportedly purged more than 500,000 voters from the rolls, blocked thousands of new registrations, and closed polling places, all while he was a candidate for governor.
There you have Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking at a meeting of the House Oversight and Reform Committee. They were doing a panel on voting rights in minority communities, and the voter suppression that happened in that race in Georgia for the 2018 midterms, we talked about a lot at the time. It was absolutely horrendous. It came in about as many forms as the Republican Party has been able to develop over recent decades. And it was even more ridiculous because, as AOC points out there, Brian Kemp was the Secretary of State. He was tasked with overseeing the elections, running in an election at the same time, and refused to recuse himself from potentially influencing an election that he was in. I say potentially. He definitely did it. We know 100% that he did. But here's the thing. She's right to point out all of the various efforts to suppress the vote, like closing down polling places, changing dates, purging voter rolls, all sorts of things like that. But at the time, we now know Brian Kemp and his campaign staff, they knew what was going on, and they honestly kind of thought the whole thing was a little bit funny. Let me give you a couple of quotes that have come out. In September 2017, then Secretary of State Kemp emailed with campaign advisors about a media report discussing efforts to correct a, quote, string of problems with county officials' attempts to challenge the registration of hundreds of voters. The report concluded that, quote, the errors may have violated federal law. It seems like a huge issue there. But Mr. Kemp responded by congratulating his campaign team, writing, quote, good work. This story is so complex, folks will not make it all the way through it. A top campaign staffer, David Dove, agreed that the article, quote, won't help draw eyeballs. So as these watchdogs are saying that the efforts to purge voters might be breaking federal law, their concern was not that they'd done the wrong thing, that they had stopped some of their potential constituents from voting, not even that they might have mistakenly broken the law. It was, okay, whatever we did, it's kind of hard to get across in a headline, and so people might not catch on to what we were doing. That's what they said. And again, these are their emails that have now been revealed where they felt freed up to be honest about what was going on. But it actually gets even a little bit worse than that. So in October 2017, after purging more than 500,000 voters from rolls, Mr. Kemp and Mr. Dove, the same two from before, emailed on their personal accounts mocking a press release from a Democratic candidate warning that Georgia is, quote, systematically deleting voters who have done nothing wrong, and that, quote, Georgia is trying to make it harder to vote. Mr. Dove forwarded the press release to Mr. Kemp, writing us with laughing emojis. Mr. Kemp replied us with a smiling emoji. So at the time, the Democratic Party in Georgia rightfully was pointing out that this wasn't like, look, any purge is terrible. This is literally 500,000 people in one go, and that was not the only one. That was just one of the many things that was done by the Georgia Republican Party to purge voters, and they thought it was funny. They're putting funny, happy, smiley, winky, laughing emojis as it was going on. And again, it would be bad enough if it was Republican Joe Schmo running for that seat, but it was the Secretary of State. The sanctity of the voting process, that's his job. That should have been his obligation, his duty, his responsibility. But he just thought the whole thing was funny because everything that was being uncovered, it wouldn't have any consequences for him, except if it did, it would be positive in that those people would not be able to vote. He certainly didn't go to federal prison for it or anything like that. Here's the thing. He at the time was pitching himself as someone who took voter fraud very seriously. What you should know is that of the 23.5 million votes cast in 42 jurisdictions in 2016, including 8 of the 10 with the highest concentration of non-citizens nationally. This is one of the concerns always raised by Republicans, that non-citizens will vote. Only 30 were even flagged for fraud investigation or prosecution, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. That's 0.0001%. It is the biggest made up hoax, fraud concern. It is in real numbers, not an actual concern. And for those Republicans, it's not a real concern either. It is used to justify the attempts that they make to suppress the vote, that's all. And it's made even more obvious, more laughable, because the guy who says he cares about the sanctity of the vote, and that's why you have to do the purges. You just have to make sure that there's no one who's voting who shouldn't be, even though the numbers show that that's not a concern whatsoever. In 2016, after a cybersecurity researcher found hacking vulnerabilities in Georgia's digital voting system, a range of experts called on Kemp to return to paper ballots. Kemp not only refused to do so, he declined to fix the vulnerabilities themselves. The same month, he spoke out against federal efforts to reclassify the American election system as, quote, critical infrastructure, because doing so would have let the Department of Homeland Security offer him cybersecurity support. So the guy whose only concern is making sure that the vote is valid didn't care about the vulnerabilities, didn't care about having a paper trail, and certainly didn't want to allow the feds to come in and assist Georgia in getting their stuff together. And again, bear in mind, it's not like it would be Obama doing it. This is the Trump federal government that he didn't want getting involved in whatever he was doing in Georgia's election system. And look, the great thing is that those emails came out, people are talking about it. AOC and others are shedding new light on what happened there, and hopefully there will be full investigations. But I have to say that while it certainly looks bad for him and hopefully will fire up people to actually get involved in elections to make sure that this doesn't happen, the chance that he will face any sort of consequences, legal or political, that seems ridiculous to even imagine. And we can point out all of the things that he did. We can point out that he was laughing about it in real time, but he's still the governor today. He won that election, and he potentially has the power to get involved the next time he decides to run. I don't know exactly what the solution is, but hopefully AOC and others who actually care about these issues will do something about it. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/thedamagereport. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.